I came in on into the office yesterday, and my birthday was on Wednesday, and Valerie had decorated the office or decorated my table with little
Oh,
streamers and stuff. And it was really, really cool. Yeah.
that
I'm
sounds like
gonna miss
something
that.
she would do.
Happy belated
Yeah.
birthday, Sean. I
Yeah.
did not know that. Happy
Thank you.
belated.
Yeah. I'm double four.
Yay, it's a good year. That's the year I'm leaving.
That's the
Leaving
year
that one.
oh, okay.
I'm on my way out. I'll be 45 at the next one.
Awesome.
Oh, I was just like, what do you mean you're leaving?
I
That took
know.
me a second to connect the dots there, Yolanda. Yolande. That's hilarious. I'm a mess. Let me start over. Redo.
Oh my God. The double
So,
digits.
Michelle, you were mentioning the BCC course, and for those of you that don't know, um, I started to sell BCC to. First of all, you can all get in on BCC if you just want to, like, as a refresher course. As master coaches, you can get that. You don't get any of the like bonuses and stuff, but well, actually, I don't even know. Well, let me check on that. But you can participate just as a refresher, and you all get tuition back to ECCP if you remember that. So that is August 7th through the 11th. We'd love to have you back. No additional charge for the master coaches. And then speaking of BCC, I decided to sell it to the Mary Kay and the direct sales crowd for the first time. I've done a program which is kind of like a watered down version of BCC or of ECCP for direct sales. And so I took a lot of the deep dive, coaching stuff and just taught them some of the things about, about coaching and leadership in general. I took out, I didn't teach them timeline therapy and some of the deeper exercises, but is like, direct sales is here and coaching certification is over here. And I took the coaching certification content and I brought it to them, right? I kind of watered it down and brought it to them. This is the first time where I'm just inviting them to it. So we're still doing BCC the way we've always done it. And it's geared toward people who want to be coaches. But the way I positioned it is that in your world of direct sales, and I think this is the case in life in general, but I said in your world of direct sales, there's no shortage of training, but that's not the problem, right? So the problem is, and I came up with a new phrase that I like. The problem is emotional activity resistance. So people are resisting doing the activities. It's not that they don't know the activities. It's they're resisting doing the activities. And the resistance is emotional. So I'm now calling this emotional activity resistance. And more training is not going to solve that, right? Because if all you do is train and tell people more of what to do, and everybody has access to what to do, right? There's no shortage. There's not a what to do deficiency on this planet, and definitely not in direct sales and not in any company. There's not a what to do deficiency. So if you train people on what to do, whether it's this is how you overcome objections, or this is what you say when you get people on the line, or this is how you make a goal poster or whatever, that doesn't address the actual issue. It doesn't address the actual resistance, right? And so in one of my emails, I said, if that's what you do as a leader, then basically all it is a fight between your intellectual training versus their emotional fears. And their emotional fears will always win. And so what I said is, if somebody has this emotional activity resistance in your company, they have to get that cleared by a coach, right? And I created this distinction between training and coaching. And not that training is bad, but training and coaching are different. Training is telling people what to do and how to do it. Coaching is addressing the emotional activity resistance and helping people through their blocks, right? So I separated the two in the webinars that I did and in the emails. And I said, you've got training and you've got coaching. And there's no shortage of training in this industry, but there's a huge shortage of coaching in this industry. So if your team members, if your prospects need coaching, then they have to go to somebody like me or my company or other life coaches, or maybe they'll get lucky because there are a few trainers out there who do know how to coach as well. But they need coaching to get through the problem, the actual problem. They don't need more training. And so I spent quite a bit of time explaining, like separating those two things and talking about, how frustrating it is for leaders when they train people and just can't understand why they won't do the work. Well, it's because the emotional activity resistance hasn't been addressed and it hasn't been dissolved, right? And so obviously the answer that everybody needs is coaching. They need the emotional activity resistance to be addressed. And that's what I'm going to teach you basically. So I said, I've been coaching for 11 years and I have a team of coaches and I study this work and I coach your team members basically. I coach people that are afraid to pick up the phone and that are afraid to go for their goals and, have all the challenges that are the actual issue in the industry. So what if I gave some of my skills to you? What if I taught you some of the things that I teach certified life coaches so that your team members don't have to go to a certified life coach? Most of them won't. And then hopefully they'll come back into your business and succeed. What if I could give you some of these tools so you can handle them immediately on the fly in the field, right? And I've talked about that before in the past when Margie and I sold the ALC program, Advanced Leadership and Coaching, but I distinguish it a lot more this time. And the reason I'm sharing this with all of you, number one, I think it really resonated with a lot of people. The feedback that I was getting, whether it was the comments on the webinars or the emails that came back to me, was like, oh my God, I never saw it that way. I never thought about that. I can't wait. This is the missing piece. And so they really believed that. Now, I was positioning that and speaking directly to either Mary Kay women on that webinar or direct sales people on that webinar. But the same concept can really be applied to everything. And so when you're talking to people that are interested in coaching, or when you're doing blogs or videos or whatever it is you're doing in your business to attract customers, you can use some form of that distinction, right? Like what you need is removing the obstacles. You don't need more information. And what are most people going to try to do? Just go out information their emotional fears, right? You're not going to out information your fears. Yet that's what people are trying to do. They're searching. People are working on it, right? By the way, anytime that you hear anybody, whether it's a client or a prospect or like anybody on the street, say, I'm working on my fear of this, or I'm working on this, I want you to challenge that. And I want you to say, how exactly are you working on that? Because I've never had anybody actually answer that question appropriately, right? Like to what I know working on it actually means, right? But in society, I believe there's this language of working on shit. And all that means is I'm aware of it and I'm not doing anything about it, right? But I'm working on it. No. You can't just work on stuff just because you know that you have a horrible relationship with somebody or you have a fear, or you have a limiting belief. You can't just work on it. But that's the phrase that I hear all the time. I'm sure you guys hear it too. You'll be more aware of it even now after this discussion, I think. But always call people out on that. Like, what does that actually mean? And they'll melt down because they can't answer that, right? And if they do answer it, I've never had anybody that, like will say, well, I have this fear of making phone calls, but I'm working on that fear. And I'll go, okay, well, how are you working on that fear? Well, I'm really working on my limiting beliefs and my identities that are creating the fears. And I know that there's these patterns that I have. They're all protection, right? Of course, nobody says that because that's the right answer. And if they were doing that, then they wouldn't still be working on it, right? So it just gives you a way as a coach to, first of all, identify what people think working on it means, and to, with love, let them know that they don't know what they're talking about, and they're not going to get anywhere by continuing to work on something, because you actually have to do the work, and you have to do the work that's appropriate. You can't just aware yourself out of grief or fear or pain or whatever. But what it also does is it gives you the opportunity to illuminate the path for them. Now, the only hesitation there, or the consideration there, is you don't want to get too technical. You don't want to scare them away. So you don't want to say, well, if you really want to work on your fear of making phone calls or why you're not losing weight, then what we have to do is we have to find your biggest pain that you've ever gone through in your life. And then I'm going to take you back to that point, and we're going to have you crying like crazy, right? And then after that, hopefully you'll pull yourself back together, blah, blah, blah. So obviously you don't want to do that, and you don't want to do anything or say anything that sounds like that, or that could possibly be received like that, right? So you don't want to tell them the path, but you want to explain it in a way that they understand that there's something more than what they would have done, right? So you could say something like, in my experience, when people have some kind of resistance towards making phone calls, it's always some other, generally some kind of unconscious pattern that we need to explore and figure out, why the pattern is there and what you're actually afraid of, and then handle the seed of the problem instead of just wrestle with the problem, right? So you can tell people things like that doesn't sound emotionally scary. It doesn't sound super difficult, but it's also not clear enough so that they think they can go do it, right? If you say something like, what we need to do is figure out when the first time was that you had fear around making phone calls. See, that gives them enough clarity to go, okay, I'm going to go figure that out. So they might believe what you're saying, but you've given them enough information so that they're going to sit around and go, where was that first time that I found fear? And even if they don't find that, and they probably won't, or maybe they will, but I would say most people won't, because they won't actually sit down. When they're on the phone with you, they'll go, oh yeah, or when they're in the conversation, like, that makes a lot of sense. I'm going to create time for myself and I'm going to explore this. But who does that? Very rarely would anybody do that. But let's say they do, and they sit down and they think about, when was the first time I felt this fear? Their head's already protecting them from finding the answer, because their head has created the solution, right? So their head has protected them from experiencing this thing, and then they're asking their head to allow them to experience it again. And they're like, come on, I've already put up that shield, So if you want an answer, I'll give you this one just to satisfy you, but it's not the real one, right? And that's just the way our human brain works. And one of the things I've said quite a bit lately, you guys might have heard me say this, but your human brain, our brain, the way it's designed and the way it's programmed, it's not designed to allow us to get the most out of ourselves. It's not designed to allow us to find the answers. It's just not, because it's the one that's protecting them, right? So going back to this example, if you give somebody too much information to where they think they can go do it on their own, then you're doing a disservice to them. And I'm speaking from so much experience, right? Danita and I were talking about this the other day, where generally if you do consultation calls, if your consultations go longer than about a half hour, there's like this point, right? You gotta spend enough time with them to create rapport, to create leverage, to let them know that you're an expert, etc. And then at a certain point, the likelihood that they will coach with you just goes down drastically. And we found that that's right around a half hour. Now, of course, the time doesn't matter as much as what's said in that time. But if you follow the consultation questions, that I've given you or something similar, it'll probably be around a half hour. And then what we've noticed is the longer you stay on the phone, the more you'll coach yourself out of a client. And one of the biggest reasons is what I'm talking about right here. Because the longer you talk, Like you can only talk in vagueness so much, right? At a certain point, especially when you're a coach, you're going to want to dive in. And that's what I used to always do. It's like, I got somebody on the phone who needs my help right now, and I'm a superhero and I'm going to help. And I would help them. I would give them some kind of, release on whatever it is that they're stuck in, or give them some answers to whatever it is they're questioning. And then they would be off. And short term, my heart feels like I served them because I had somebody who was in need and I solved their need. Long term though, and it took me many years to understand this, long term, I had to realize that I hurt them because I gave them a short-term Band-Aid to a problem that immediately gave them some satisfaction, intellectually or emotionally. And then because I coached them out of, more support, they went off into the world thinking that they're good, thinking that they got it, right? And they don't got it. I mean, we look at what we've gone through, right? And we still don't got it. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that's going to continue to come up, right? And we've swam the deepest oceans in this stuff. So it's a disservice to, like, what we want to do. This is a marketing concept, but it applies to your coaching consultations, or, I mean, any form of marketing, because your consultation is a form of marketing. It's something that I was telling somebody the other day, and I never really put these two words together, but what you want to do is you want to maintain intrigue and incompleteness, right? So they have to be intrigued and incomplete in order to want to take the next step. If they're not intrigued, then of course they don't care about what the next step is. If they are intrigued, wow, I really want to know how I can do this, this, and that, and you give them a sense of completion, then they won't take the next step, right? And that sense of completion on a one-time event, on a call or a one-time interaction, will always be, well, maybe not always. There are some people that only want one quick, shallow thing, and they're not interested in coaching long-term. And if you assess that to be true, then go ahead and solve the problem, right? Serve them as much as you can. But for the most part, people need ongoing support. And this isn't, a sales tactic to get money out of people's wallet. It's a service tactic to make sure people get the support that we all know they're going to need long-term. And in order to set people up to say yes to a longer-term support, they have to be incomplete. Because if they feel like they're complete, what's the point of taking the next step? So that's why I said a few moments ago that you've got to make sure that you're not coaching people out of the desire to continue, right? And so this conversation that I've been having with my groups could be one of the ways. And when you distinguish that coaching is the missing, piece, and then you keep it vague and you say something like, what we need is to find the seed of whatever is actually causing the problem. Otherwise, you'll never be able to get rid of this problem. I mean, all you'll do is just wrestle with the solution for the rest of your life. I mean, how does that sound? Right? So you can kind of paint the picture of the pain, and then you can say, or, we can find whatever the seed is, and then, the problem can go away and you don't have to keep wrestling with it. And when you talk about the seed, when you talk about the actual coaching work, you want to make sure that you don't make it sound difficult. You don't make it sound scary. You don't make it sound super emotional. And that's tough because we're geeks and we love that stuff, right? We love the deep emotional stuff. And so we're going to be tempted to talk about it. Like, let me tell you about this thing that I saw somebody do one time, blah, blah, blah. But we can't do that. We have to remember that these people, especially people that have not been in our space for a long time and, they're not all in, we have to remember as much as we can to give them what they can currently digest. Because if we give them too much and they can't digest it, then we're doing them a disservice, right? If we don't give them enough and they're not intrigued, then we're doing them a disservice. So we want to give them enough that they can digest it to be intrigued, but not too much to where they feel this false sense of completion in the moment, or they feel like they can do this on their own. So that's what I used to do a lot of times in webinars and on phone calls, and I would paint the process for them. And I would say, what we need to do is we need to go back and figure out when the first time was that you experienced this pain. And then once we find that out, then all we have to do is reframe that. So instead of, you holding on to the story that you created, we need to create a new story. And they're going, okay, I can do that, right? And so it's like I gave them the template to follow. And 90% of them are never going to find that space to even try to do it. And the ones that do are probably not going to find the thing. And so I've done a disservice by giving them a false sense of completion or a false sense of, I guess, ability to self-coach, right? And so that's where the disservice comes in. And this is it's a tough thing to navigate for a lot of coaches. So when I had Lisa as our salesperson, she always wanted to go to ECCP. And I kept telling her, absolutely not. Because as soon as you become a coach, you're going to suck at sales, right? You're not going to be as good as a salesperson. Now she was different than Linda and Danita. Linda and Danita are fantastic on the phone selling our programs. But they were already coaches, right? And they were coaches that are able to, because they understand all this stuff, that are able to resist the temptation to out-coach a sale, right? So they've learned these too, but most of the time, those two animals are on, in different cages, the sales animal and the coaching animal, right? They're different muscles. So Linda and Danita are uncommon hybrids, I would say. And so most people, now it's better to be a good coach and learn how to sell inside that positive framework, right? It's very difficult. I've seen, at least, I haven't seen very many salespeople that are just, that's just their makeup, that's their muscle, and there's no judgment on that. But I haven't seen very many salespeople be really good coaches, because that's a difficult transition to make, because you're already successful at this level, right? Whereas coaches, they just want to help people, and then they have to learn how to be successful with the sales, right? So anyway, I know I'm kind of going scattered here, but it's an important message when it comes to marketing. And I just wanted to share how successful it has been in this week. I had no idea. I think we have like 40 Mary Kay women that purchased BCC. We didn't have as many direct sales, although I don't have as many direct sales people. But we had like 40 of them, and I was hoping for like 7. I would have been happy with 7, maybe 8, squeeze out 10, and like 20 of them bought after the first webinar. And they've just been continually buying because they're resonating with this message. So that's what I wanted to share with you, is how powerful this message seems to be, and specifically the distinction between training and coaching. So hopefully that's valuable, and you can implement it in one way with your clients that you already have, or in your prospecting trying to get clients. You guys have any comments or questions on that?
I love it. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, good stuff.
I appreciate it.
What does BCC stand for?
Yeah, you didn't even go through BCC. So BCC is Breakthrough Coaching Certification, and it's my online program now. So what I've done with ECCP is, because we wanted to do more lead generation online, it's very, very difficult to get somebody brand new to you and then, have them pay for a 5-day live event, right? So we had to bridge that gap. And instead of making people jump over this bar that was really, really high, we wanted to give them something more of like an introductory thing. And so what I did is I took about 70 to 75% of the content from ECCP, and I pulled it out and I'm teaching it in this online course. And then ECCP is still going to be 5 days, but we're going to be able to dive deeper sooner, and we're going to stay in the deeper work longer. And so now everybody that goes to ECCP, they have to listen to the online recordings because that's a part of the curriculum. So I just stretch the curriculum out and I'm delivering the first chunk of it online and then the next chunk of it live in person. And so at ECCP, we're going to be doing like much deeper timeline therapy and a lot more of the personal like work that people, just need for their own personal stuff. So it's going to give me a lot more freedom rather than trying to fit 7 days or 8 days of content into this 5-day course. Because every time I've done ECCP, there's been a lot of stuff left out. So that's what BCC is, Breakthrough Coaching Certification. It's online. So it'll be a review for anybody that's gone through ECCP because all the material is pulled out of the ECCP manual. But, I'm different and I've got different applications of all this stuff. And sometimes I've got different explanations. So it'll be a good refresher for those of you that want to do it. And if you want to do it, you just got to let me know, send me an email and we'll tag you in the system and send you the webinar that you need to sign up for. Okay. So let me share my screen with you and we'll go into this next coaching piece. The next part of our curriculum is environments. And I think it's number 7. Let's see if I have the PGA curriculum up. Let me pull up the curriculum here. Are you able to see the screen now that says PGA coaching curriculum? Or do you only see the other file?
I only see the
environment.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because I shared just that file. So I guess you can just share one file at a time maybe. Or you can share your whole desktop. I'll just share my desktop. Okay. So now you should be able to see the curriculum, right?
Yes.
So we've gone through purpose, visioning, personalized action plan, daily growth, values clarification, environments. Well, environments is next, sorry. So we've gone through all of these. Environments is very similar to values. So it's not going to take us very long to go through it. I'm open, for discussion for sure. But I created this little file here and I'll share it with all of you. It's not complete though, because just before the Zoom call, I realized that I want to explain what each of these sections mean. So I'm going to add that.
Yes.
But the way
a ton of notes from
yeah,
a previous call.
yeah, because we went over them. Did we go over environments in one of the master candidate calls? Because I use it with beliefs.
That's how we did it. We went over it on one of these calls as it pertains to elicitating somebody's beliefs.
Beliefs, right, exactly. So, and so usually what I've been doing lately is teaching the environments inside the belief conversation. So you all know about this. I've changed the environments just a little bit. Physical surroundings is what used to just be physical because it's just easier to understand. Core relationships, I think it's easier for people to understand that those are the closest relationships. And you can see on this graphic, I spelled out what's in the success team. And then I'm going to type in here the physical surroundings. basically everything that's around you, right? And those change as you move in the world. So you have one set of physical surroundings wherever you live, and you might have a bunch of irritations all around. You might have a door that creaks, or you might have a window that won't close, and anything around your environments that are irritating you, they're working on you constantly, right? You're being influenced by your physical surroundings, and it either inspires you or it expires you, basically. So you're managing the irritation or you love it. And so if you don't like the way your walls are painted, and you don't like, the setup of the furniture or whatever, most of us think that that's not a huge deal, but it's a bigger deal than a lot of people realize, because we're constantly sitting in the irritation and dealing with the irritation. And then if you go into your car has its own physical surroundings. You go to the office, you go wherever it is that you go. So these physical surroundings are constantly changing, but we have a relationship to our physical surroundings, right? The next one is body, and that's the relationship to our physical body. Most people aren't 100% in love with their body. There's at least one area or body part or issue that they have. And obviously everywhere we go, we bring our body. So we're sitting in, it's like we're bathing in the irritation because we are in our body. And sometimes the irritation is the way the body looks. My nose is too big, my butt is too small, or whatever. And sometimes it's the pain. It's the experience of the body. So if your back really hurts, you're sitting in that experience, and it's affecting your relationship with your body 24 hours a day, right? So whether it's an external thing or an internal thing, our relationships with our bodies are critical. The next one is self. That's more about your self-esteem and how you think about yourself, how you relate to yourself. You look in the mirror, do you like what you see? So this isn't necessarily the tangible pieces of like the body, but it's, do you like who you are? Do you like who you see? Do you love yourself? Do you have positive conversations with yourself, like with your head talk and so forth? Just how do you feel about yourself? That's the self environment. The next one is money, and that's everything that has to do with money. And with these environments, I think I said it before inside of the values or the beliefs conversation, with these environments, everything is up to the individual to define what success is in each of the environments, right? So for some people, a 10 in a money environment could be that they have, $1 million cash in the bank, because that's their definition of it. And somebody else might be, whenever they need money, they can make it. And that's their definition of a 10, and that's fine. So there's no universal definition for money or really any of these environments. It's up to the person. The next one is network, and that is our network of people that we know. We are involved in many, many different sub-networks. So like if you have children, you are in a mom's network, and it doesn't mean that you're actually in an organization that has a name and you meet weekly. It doesn't have to be official like that. But what are the different groups that you're a part of, basically, right? And all the people that you know and that you relate to, but that are not like super close. Okay, that's your network of people. And usually, I don't know why I did it this way. I guess it just depends on which way I go around the circle. It's easier to explain network if you've explained core relationships first. And for whatever reason, I generally don't do that. Your success team, as it mentions on the graphic here, there's basically 5 components of a success team. This is all stuff that I've just made up over the years based on what I know to be helpful. And I was thinking today I might start calling that the support team instead of the success team, because that's really more of what it is. It's supporting you to success. And I think support is more of an inviting word for a lot of people. So anyway, I might make that change. But there are 5 components: an accountability partner, a mentor, a mastermind, events, and a private coach. So an accountability partner is somebody that you get on the phone with generally every day, or you communicate somehow every day, and you kind of hold each other accountable. Sometimes accountability partners can be more of a group, like you post your commitments to a group, and just something that can provide accountability beyond yourself, right? A mentor is separate from a coach. A mentor is somebody who has done what you're trying to do. You're not paying a mentor. There's no official relationship, and they're just, helping you in whatever way they can, but they're not necessarily trained as a coach. A mastermind is a group of people that you get with in person if you can, over the phone if you can't, every so often, and maybe every 2 weeks or every month, although 2 weeks is preferable. And you just support each other. So there's different kinds of mastermind structures, but the basic structure is, each person gets the support of the group. And then live events, I think that's self-explanatory, and a private coach. I think that's also self-explanatory. So those are the 5 elements of a success team or a support team. I'm going to change it to support team because I like that better. Core relationships are the closest relationships that you have. It doesn't necessarily mean your immediate family. It's the people who influence you the most because you spend the most amount of time or the most quality time. It's not necessarily the people that you spend the most time with, because those might not be your most influential relationships. And it's usually a small number. For some people, they only have 2 or 3 core relationships. Some people have, maybe more, 7, 8, 9. It's generally not more than, I'd say, 6 or 7 for most people who their core relationships are. These are the people that are having more of an intimate exchange of conversation, time spent together, etc. And you're just being more influenced by those people. So your core relationships will influence you more than your network relationships. Nature is your connection to, with, and your experience of nature, whatever that looks like. And again, it's different for a lot of different people. For some people, it's being at the beach. For some people, it's just getting outdoors. For Hawaiians, it's like being in the ocean, right? Like that's just such a big part of their culture and their upbringing. And for some people, it's not as much. It's just getting outside for a little bit of time. But it's just being in nature and experiencing like the live energy of nature, right? Spiritual connection is not church. That's like the first thing I say. It's not necessarily, do you go to church and do you tithe and do you follow the human application of spirit, right? It's what is your spiritual connection to whatever you want to be spiritually connected to. So for some people, the labels are different, right? It could be God or the universe or Mother Earth or nature or even self, right? Whatever you want to be spiritually connected to. And I think we all know that there are plenty of people that go to church and don't have any spiritual connection. And there are plenty of people that have more spiritual connection than almost anybody, and they don't go to church. So church doesn't necessarily lead to spiritual connection. So it's not necessarily a measure of it. It can be there, but it's not just that. So it's more about how connected do I feel to a higher power, a bigger power, whatever that looks like. And then the belief system is just in general, overall, what's my belief? What are my beliefs doing, right? Meaning, are they generally positive? Do I usually look at the bright side of things? Are my beliefs supportive of me, or do I generally have a negative belief system and they're holding me back, etc.? So that one's a little bit more vague because it's assessing, beliefs, whereas the other ones, not all of them are measurable and tangible, but there's more of a feeling to them, and very rarely can people feel their beliefs, whereas they can feel a spiritual connection, or they can feel a connection with nature, right? So the belief system is a little bit more challenging in my experience to assess, but that's really what it is. It's, in general, how would you say your belief system is operating? So those are the explanations. What I'm going to do is type that up on this form, and then I'll send it out to you all. And it's designed to be used one of two ways. You could just give it to a client and they could follow it. That's how I've tried to write all of the instructions. Or you could just have it and pace them through it. And then the piece with environments that we did with values, it's the exact same, actually. I just went in and changed a few words, but it's the exact same process of up-leveling your current rating to one level higher. So we can do that with values, obviously. And the difference between the two, so even though the process is identical, the difference between the two is significant, because your values are the things that are important to you. And sometimes, especially if you elicit values the way we teach it, it's all individualized, right? So people's lists of values are going to be completely personalized to them and not just this generic set of values. And then your environments, though, these are 10 things that we have said we need to look at, right? Because if we ask other people, okay, what are the important environments in your life? They probably won't have the same effect, right? So the difference is, we're saying these are the 10 environments, let's look at those. And with values, we're saying, what are the values? Let's have you write them first, come up with them out of what's important to you, and then we'll play with them. But the way we play with both of them to up level is the same. So it starts with a reality check on a scale of 1 to 10. How would you rate yourself? Level down. If somebody is between a 3 and a 4, choose a 3. Don't cover up anything, and focus on why so high. So if somebody says it's a 3, great. So at least it's not a 0. So let's focus on the 3 part first before we focus on the deficit, because that's what most people do, is focus on the deficit between 3 and 10. And we at least want to start with gratitude. And then, I read, this was already in the values piece, but I reread it again. It just kind of hit me this last sentence right here. It's much easier to improve your life with appreciation than it is with shame. And obviously most people, or many people at least, if not most, are shaming themselves in all kinds of ways. So we have that rating. We focus on why so high. So if you're coaching them through this, you would actually ask them these things, or this could be a self-study thing that somebody goes through individually. I would not want people to individually go through values, because they need to be asked these questions in order to pull it out of them. But this is not the same kind of information. So I found that people can go through environments, because it's a set number, of environments, and they can just assess. They can do it a little bit easier. So then again, just like values, what would it take to get to the next level up? And so we have the same form. They would write in here whatever their environment is, and then they would write the activities to get them to the next level. And just to highlight again, this is the really important piece. You've got to come up with activities that are controllable, right? And observable. That's the key piece. So they can't be stuck in this, like, I just want to get closer to God, or I just want to have more money, or I want to heal my relationship with money. And none of those things are observable. How is somebody going to come in and say, oh, okay, now I can see that your relationship to money is healed, or I can see that you're closer to God? Those are not observable. So we want something that we can put inside people's, inside the calendar, right? And then that's a controllable activity. So that's the environments piece, same as values, just starting with a different thing. And like you guys said, this environment wheel was also explained inside the beliefs conversation. And I never used to do that. Beliefs, I used to just try to elicit people's beliefs on their own. And I don't know if I just did it at an event one time or with a client, but I realized, okay, we've already done this environments thing. If that's the reality, right? Like the environments, I think you've all heard me say the analogy of what's on the film versus what's on the movie screen, right? This environments is the movie screen. And so if that's what people are experiencing, well, then let's just back into their beliefs. So that's why I now use those two together, because I've just found that this is a really easy thing to do with people, and it's a great way to back into their beliefs. Some people use the environments assessment as an intake thing, even whether it's when somebody starts coaching with you or even when they're thinking about coaching with you. Because if you give somebody an assessment like this, they can see their deficiencies all around. And I mean, none of us like to see the environments being really low. And then sometimes that gives them a lot more leverage to work on it, right? Like we can work on your core relationships, or we can work on your money environment or what have you. So it gives them some of that intrigue that I talked about earlier, but then there's a sense of incompleteness because, you're not going to tell them how to do it yet, right? So I've seen it used. I think Kelly Robbins used it in assessments before, like as a sales tool, and it's worked well there also. So are there any questions on environments? Hello, Artemis. Welcome.
Hello, dear. Can you hear
We
me?
just
go ahead.
Hi, Artemis.
Hi, Artemis.
Thank you, guys. Is there a place that you want us to download this document that you're showing?
Yeah, I'm gonna put it in the Google folder, so I don't have this completed. I was gonna send it to you guys, and then right at like the last minute, I realized I want to explain what these sections mean to me, at least. And so then once that's complete, then I'll put it in the Google folder and send you the link, and you guys can download it.
Happy birthday.
Thank you. I had a great one. It was a lot of fun. Just a lot of fun doing not much of anything. I mean, we did stuff like Sybil and I played golf, and we went out to lunch and stuff like that, but it was fun. Nice and easy and fun and chill.
A fun day.
Michelle, you were going to say something?
Well, I was going to ask the same question that Artemis asked. If you were going to share, just since it's updated with the new titles and then with your notes. So thank you for doing that. And then I was just going to comment that the other thing, I've never used this in the assessments piece, but when I have used it early on in the calls, I find that it also gives a way for them to track progress at the end. So if they're able to kind of go back and see that when we first started together, they had nature at a 2 and now it's at a 4, like they can really get a sense that the work that they're doing with us as coaches is actually working. I just wanted to share that.
Exactly. That's huge. That's the tangible progress. Mm-hmm. And as coaches, then we know, I mean, like, you could work with somebody for a year on their environments.
Yes.
And go back and forth and dive in and go after the beliefs. And, you might spend 2 months just on body. Right. So it gives a set of targets as well for us as coaches to constantly go back and check in on. So it provides both of those.
I used it recently with a coaching client, and it was, wow. I mean, that the person was just like floored where their scores were. So it also, not only is it a place for you to check from, but I think at the beginning of coaching, it gives them an opportunity to say, damn, I really need work.
Exactly. Yeah. Because most people, I think everybody is in touch on some level to what they don't like, right? They're in touch with being overweight or not having money or having conflict in a relationship. But most people don't do some kind of assessment like this, and they definitely don't really know what to do about it for the most part. So having it on paper is super powerful. And the other thing is, I think we've talked about this before. We live in a diagnose and prescribe society. That's what people are used to. That's why people love horoscopes. That's why people love being told by the doctor what pill to take. Like, just tell me what's wrong and tell me what I got to do to fix it, or tell me who I am. Like, that's why people really like personality assessments as well. Tell me who I am, label me somehow, and then tell me what my future is going to be like, right? I mean, Michelle, you saw a lot of the DISC personality and how it's used in Mary Kay. I mean, they just live by that thing, the ones that have been exposed to it.
Oh my God. Yeah. They cling to it like forever as well.
Yeah. And in my opinion, they use it in a restrictive way because they learn who they're not supposed to talk to or who just simply can't get along. Right. So there's not, in my opinion, there's not possibility inside of it. But if human psychology wants to be diagnosed and prescribed, then let's do it, right? If that's going to be a good way for them to digest the material. So that's one of the components of this particular assessment, or that's one of the reasons why it works so well with people.
Can I share something with you guys?
Sure.
I think this is something, I'm not sure if it's on YouTube or whatever, but I found it really, it's interesting in the high performance coaching. I really do find myself more over on this side of coaching, on the side of the things people bring up. Like I was just with the young women, but they kind of have a description in each of the areas. They're not necessarily the same exact areas, but health, lover, family and friends, mission, finances, hobby, and spirit. And it's interesting that they've got a description that allows people to, do you want me to give you an example so you know what I'm saying?
Sure.
So under health, I feel that my overall physical and emotional health and well-being is primed and optimized to make me feel energetic, motivated, and strong each day. I have the mental and physical stamina to deal with life's challenges and opportunities, and I regularly take care of myself so that I can feel my best. Scale of 1 to 10. And it was interesting to me because right away, the place where people, scale themselves lowest, really does help as a coach to know where they want to go. Yeah.
And the good thing about that, so I've seen assessments like that with values, I think. No, I don't think it was values. I think it was some business assessment, actually. The good thing about that is it allows people to just assess according to the description and then come up with a number. So it's easier to say, well, I don't feel good when I wake up in the morning, or I don't feel empowered, or I don't feel energetic, or what have you. So a description like that helps people with the assessment. And sometimes that's good, and sometimes it's not. Sometimes it doesn't allow, like a description like that has to be absolutely complete.
Right.
So that there might not be something that somebody otherwise needs to focus on that isn't described there, right? So somebody might go, okay, in this environment, I'm going to look at this, and this. And because they're being guided, they don't look at this when this is the thing that they actually need. So I think it's kind of there's pros and cons for each of them. If you allow people to just say, hey, what would you rate yourself on a scale of 1 to 10? They might not even think of some of the important things because you just ask them to rate, and they don't even have, a list to go down. So I like that for most reasons. And then as a coach, we can just, navigate that and make sure.
I thought the thing that Lisa had given us that gave more areas for people to really understand what those environments might be, not limited to. But do you remember the pages where?
Yeah, that's probably it, because she teaches.
I felt that was more inclusive for people to really realize, not like I said, not limited to the things she asked, but just giving you some ideas going, oh, I wouldn't have thought of that.
And I think you can do both. I think you can do a hybrid, right? So you can maybe give them a list of things to think about and then plant some other seeds. so that, you know, if there's anything else, think about this or whatever. But actually, yeah, now that you say that, because Lisa took, it's from the same Coachville. The same guy that created Coachville is where Lisa got that as well. I didn't get it from him. I got it from somebody who got it from him. Yeah. But it's the same. It's the same foundational piece.
Coaching, and even for myself, like I didn't. When you break it down like this, it does make it much easier to begin to realize. Well, I mean, they all need to go together, but it is very interesting to look at what the places are that you tend to ignore or tend to.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Cool. So that's all I got. If you guys have any other questions, then reach out to me. It's always good to connect with you. I do want to keep this to about an hour, just to respect all the time that you guys put in the calendar, etc. But if there's anything else about this or anything at all, then let me know.
You've had some big changes.
Yeah, in what?
In your world.
I would agree with that.
I'll give you a call.
Yeah, I would definitely agree with that. And I appreciate that. I appreciate the acknowledgement. So yes, we can talk about it offline.
Michelle, are both you and Yolanda coming in August?
I wish I was. I really wanted to. I'm not going to be able to make it.
No. How you doing, girl?
Michelle.
Michelle, are you?
How are you?
Am I going to ECCP in August?